All right, we have Kristy Gillmore who is joining us. She's from Houston, but living in New York City. Thank you so much for joining us. We are so excited to have you.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your family?
Sure. So I Chrissy, my name is actually Kristyan, and it's spelled in a way that makes it difficult for people to manage. So I go by Chrissy. That's what my family has always called me, and I think it's more fitting with my personality. But I think the name also says a lot about who I am because I grew up, very religious, very structured, very rigid, and that kind of led me into my career now as an attorney and a business coach for people. And so since I have evolved and become more authentic in who I am, I decided to be, true to myself and just Chrissy now. So I'm also a part-time college professor, and I have a 2-year-old baby girl that I had kind of late in life. So I'm 44 now with a toddler and living my best life for sure.
That's so awesome. Toddlers keep
Mhm.
you on your toes. There's no doubt about it.
Absolutely.
That's so great. So, what did your journey to becoming a single mom look like?
Well, I mean, my life has been really good. I'm grateful. I'm one of those people who I can say I've kind of always gotten what I wanted, although, my childhood wasn't perfect. I definitely like figured it out pretty quickly and have been able to create a life that I enjoy. And so I kind of planned it. I didn't really plan it in a sense like I got IVF and did all this stuff, but it's like I just created the space in my life for my child, and it just happened. It worked out. Like my career was in a good place, and during the pandemic, or the height of the pandemic, I was just really kind of in a healthy place, and I think I just kind of manifested it. Now I didn't intend to be single, and co-parenting from a distance. My daughter's father lives in Tampa, and I'm here in New York. And so that part wasn't planned, but I don't regret it. Like it's absolutely kind of what I wanted, even though I wasn't willing to admit it. Like I said, I came up very religious, and so it was hard for me to accept that I really don't mind being a single mom. I can't say I prefer it yet, but I don't mind it. And so it happened perfectly for me. I was able to do, everything I needed to do in my career. I traveled a lot, I have established good friendships. I'm pretty aware of who I am and, settled and comfortable in my own skin. And so I think it just happened on its own once I got to a certain place.
Hello.
Oh, there she is. Hi.
Say hi. I like that you didn't prefer it, but you don't mind it.
Hmm.
Definitely relate to that because it's not, it wasn't in the plans, but it's definitely given me a better peace of mind to raise my kids. And yeah. uh
Yeah. It's one of those things that, I mean, I'm sure we, like many of us, come from traditional backgrounds and stuff and just have an idea in mind of what it should be. But I actually realized pretty early on when me and my daughter's father split up when she was around maybe like a year and a half. And I experienced that, grieving all that. But when I came out of it, I was like, hey, so really, when you're with someone, because he and I were really close and like we were together all the time. And so it was just, we were that unit. And so you really don't get any time to yourself between the father and the child. But at least, and I'm not saying that this is better or whatever, but I just realized like, oh, wow, I actually get time to myself this way, and that clicked for me. And then I just try to really make the best of that time instead of missing it was hard. Like I still do miss my daughter when she's away, but I try to just capitalize on it because I think it's a privilege to be able to have time to yourself. When you're married, you don't really have any time to yourself. The other thing is, I think an important part of my journey was like I said, I grew up really religious. So I ended up getting married. The summer before my senior year in college, I got married. I was 19 years old and it was crazy. I was way too young and my parents definitely should have said no. But of course, once I came back and said, oh, came back from college, I'm in love, we're having sex, so that means we're getting married. And so I was married at 19, divorced by 23. And I actually really loved my ex-husband, and so like I have been through a marriage that was happy and stuff. And so I know what that feels like and the constancy of it. Like I remember sitting in my apartment one day and I was probably about 21 years old and I was thinking to myself, oh my gosh, he's coming home again. Like just the constancy of him coming home every day, even though I really loved him and like spending time with him, it was just like so permanent and in a way that I didn't necessarily appreciate. And so I don't take lightly the sanctity of marriage and like that commitment because I've done that before. And when I do it again, I understand what it really means. Like it's way more than the children. So I just think that for me personally right now, it's better to be single and co-parenting than to be in an unhappy marriage, which I think a lot of people are actually, and they never admit it.
You said that you had grief. I want to know how you get over your grief and what are some ways that you get over your grief because I can relate to
That's
that.
a really good question. I think the grief process is so important. And that many times we don't have the opportunity to like sit in it. I had to learn about loss really early in life. Like my parents were divorced when I was 2, and then my dad got caught up in like the drug wars and was incarcerated for most of my life. And so it's like I was grieving things at a young age. And then being from Houston, we actually had people, this is public knowledge now, but we have these hurricanes and major storms like every 3 to 5 years. And so I was constantly having to grieve the loss of a home and all of the contents in my home and having to go to a new home. Like I did this, several times as a child and even in my young adult years. So it became a process. And this culminated in, I wasn't thinking about talking about this and I don't want to go too deep into it because it still really hurts a lot. But in 2020, like around the time when all the George Floyd stuff and all the police brutality things were really on the forefront because they're still happening. It's just that at that time there was more media coverage. I actually lost my brother to police brutality in Houston. And so that was the first time when I said, okay, I'm going to, well, it wasn't the first time. Let me say, after my divorce, I also went through a similar process. But I said, listen, I'm going to be intentional about my grief more than just being in therapy. I've been in therapy ever since I got divorced at 23 because I knew I needed someone to process that with because there was like domestic violence and all that in my marriage. I decided to join a grief group, like more than just therapy. I joined this group, like grief share group, and I was able to meet with other people who had lost loved ones and like listen to their stories and hearing other people like how bad it was for them and that I wasn't alone. Like I'm not the only one who's feeling this way. So it was really helpful for me, to go further than just therapy, but to actually unite with other people in my grief and to find a lot of comfort in that. So now recently me and my daughter's father got pregnant again when she was about 14 months old. And then I ended up losing the baby a couple months later and also losing the relationship a couple months later. And it was just a lot of compounded grief processing. And so I hate to say I'm kind of getting good at it now. I've always been, recreational person. Like I find a lot of solace in nature. I've had like being outside, being in the woods, hiking, being in the trees. I can just like release a lot. I do cry. I still cry a lot. I'm okay crying. You just have to kind of and be prepared for it to hit you all of a sudden. Like one of the things that surprises me is like my grief for my little brother was like certain love songs. It's weird. It's like something you never think, but there's like certain love songs that will come on, and I like think about him. It's not even a romantic way or anything. It's just like a trigger. So you just never know with grief, and you have to be prepared for however it chooses to come up. And I think I'm kind of an eccentric person anyway, and kind of quirky. So people are not surprised when I like do something weird, like just start crying or whatever. But I had created the space with my friends and family to be that person like years ago. So I have like say emotional safety in like in my grief. They're not surprised if I say something weird or whatever. So I think you have to build up to it. I don't think that these things happen like spontaneously. Like I'm an intuitive person and I've cultivated my intuition. And so it's not like most of the time when I have to grieve something, I'm not surprised. Like I kind of knew the stuff was going to happen. I think that most people do, but we try to play coy, or sometimes we just try to play like, oh, But really, I kind of knew something that the relationship wasn't going to work. So I had an opportunity to like build up to that, and that's what I would suggest for people: keep yourself consistently in a self-care routine, so that when things happen it's not like, oh, all of a sudden I got to get myself together, because it's too late at that point. And that's something I had to learn the hard way. So cultivating a self-care routine that's consistent regardless of circumstance, I think was a big part of my grief process.
Wow. I am so sorry for the loss of your brother and the miscarriage. I understand both and the pain of both. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I read this thing that grief comes in waves.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that is so
It's
true.
very true. Very true.
And it's
And I do want to say, I think, I mean, one thing that got me with the miscarriage is that, I mean, how many women have been through that and like don't talk about it or maybe didn't grieve it properly? Even abortions and stuff, like I think we just have to see them, we have more compassion for ourselves about it and like really go there with it and grieve it because it's a loss. It's a real loss, just like any other, you know.
right. And I think that what you said about finding the community is so important. Finding grief groups and surrounding yourself with a community of people that understand what you're going through and can help. Just even hearing what other people are going through can help you,
Absolutely. Yeah.
which is a huge part of why I want to do this podcast because I want to learn from other moms and what do they do? How do you succeed? How have you become successful? So thank you again for joining us. And
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's always helpful to talk about this, anything. Like I'm a talker and like it's always therapeutic for me to process it again.
yeah,
Thank you for doing this and creating this platform for people to share.
well, thank you. So let's talk about how you've become a mother at 41 and what is that like? That's so inspiring.
I remember being where you are and thinking, oh my gosh, like I need to do it now or whatever. I'm so glad I didn't fall for that. I had that same feeling many times throughout my life. Definitely in my late 20s, I had it like 27 to 30. I felt a lot of pressure. And then again in my late 30s. But I had the blessing of, let me see, I was 30, 18. So I was 38 and I had a psychiatrist who was in her 50s and had a toddler. And she was the one who told me, thank God for her. She said it's a myth. The 35 and up thing is a myth, and that they basically just do that because she wasn't American. She was like Ukrainian or something. And she said they just do that in America. Like, all the other ways that they lie to us is
Wow.
just an American. Yeah, it's just an American myth. Like most cultures, it's people have children whenever they want. She released me. That was the first stage of release. And then she gave me the information for this place called the Hope Center in New York, where she had gone to have help with her child. Now, I never needed help, but like having that gave me some sense of assurance. And then I didn't freeze eggs, but I went through the process of like learning about it and I knew, okay, well, that's also an option. Like I looked at all my options and I just kept that hope alive throughout. And then I told myself because I knew I wanted to be a mom and I accepted that if I didn't find the right partner, that I was willing to adopt. I said, if I make it to 42 and I don't have a child natural, I don't get pregnant naturally, I'm going to look into adoption. I just made that choice. And I think that I don't know. I know there's something to, oh, I want to have my own baby and stuff, but I think that if you're thinking I would never adopt, but you want to be a mom, like you really need to look at why do you want to be a mom? Like what is it that you really want? Because I knew I wanted to be a mother so that I could leave my imprint on someone, right? And that it did not require for that child to be birthed from my body in order for me to achieve that outcome. And so with that, I was willing to adopt. But I'm not judging anybody who's saying, "Oh, I would never adopt" or whatever. But whenever I hear people say that, I'm like, like really think about what are you trying to do? You want somebody that looks like you? Like, what exactly is the reasoning, right? So that I think that freed me from the pressure so that every relationship I had wasn't centered around, oh my God, are we getting married so we could get pregnant and stuff. And so I just released it. I was like, if it happens, great. If it doesn't happen, this is my plan. And like when we went into the pandemic, I turned 20. Sorry, 20. I felt like 20, but in 2020, I turned 40. And it was like the pandemic had just hit, like in March or whatever. And so I remember I was driving because I was living in New York at the time. And I drove, my brother passed away. So no, there were no flights and all that stuff. Or maybe I didn't want to fly, but I drove from New York to Houston. And on that journey, I just like, I don't know, I just decided what my plan was going to be. I went home, I stayed with my dad who was formerly incarcerated, who I hadn't really had a chance to get to know for most of my life, but he was out and everything. And, we had talked on the phone a lot, but I hadn't lived in Houston in a long time because I moved to the East Coast for law school. I went to Howard Law. I moved to the East Coast and was living in DC and Philly and different stuff even before I moved to New York. So I had been away from Houston for a long time. But going back to Houston, I talked to my father and I was like, I really want to spend time with you. I want us to work on our relationship. It's important to me to know you and stuff. And I think that overcoming some of those daddy issues with him was also really helpful. Like during the pandemic time, like he and I spent a lot of time together. We had our routine. We did Bible study. We watched our church on TV. We worked out like all the different stuff. Like I created like a crazy schedule. I'm willing to share this with anybody, but I did this when I was working on the bar exam, actually, where I break down like every 30 minutes of my day into like an Excel spreadsheet. And so I redid my spreadsheet and put in like everything like therapy, all of my work meetings, all of my business meetings, all of my, exercise. When am I going to cook dinner? I just kind of created like this real solid structure and I just kept it up. Like, and I know not everybody had that liberty, right? I never got COVID, I was safe and all that stuff. And so I just worked my program. And by the time it was over, went and quote unquote over, I felt like I literally felt like something inside of me was just like empty, not empty in a bad way, but it was like I had created a vacuum in my soul. Like I could feel this really safe and healthy space that I had created inside. And I think it was a combination of everything, like trying to eat right because where I was, they were giving out food, everywhere they were giving out food. So we had pretty decent nutrition, like, fresh fruits and vegetables. I did Pilates on Zoom. I ran, and I did my prayers. I did my Bible study. I meditated because Calm had gave away like a free year. I took that, it's like I just used all the tools and I felt like I thought that it was going to be something with my business. I knew something was going to happen. I was like, oh, I guess I'm going to get a new contract or maybe I'm going to get my dream job or whatever. I just knew something was going to happen. So I sat with it. I wasn't in a relationship or anything, but after the pandemic ended, I decided because I was working remote, I wanted to leave Houston, but I wasn't free to come back to New York yet because I had a tenant living in my apartment and she couldn't leave yet. So I was kind of like not sure where I was going. And I found out about this program in Tulsa where they were paying people to come and live there for a year and they gave you like $10,000. And because I wasn't stuck anywhere, I decided to apply. Now, mind you, I went to the University of Oklahoma for undergrad, so it wasn't like Oklahoma was new to me. I would not recommend that anybody go there without visiting first because it's a very specific type of place. But I went into the Tulsa remote program and my goal was to help create businesses on Black Wall Street because that's what I do as a business attorney and coach. I help people create and scale, usually, minority owned businesses. And so I said, I'm going to go down here. I'm going to give as much as I can. I'm going to create as many businesses as I can in this year. And when I went, I met a man who owned a bookstore, who was opening a bookstore in Greenwood. And I met him on some, oh, we're just doing a business consultation thing. And then the next thing I know, he was asking me, oh, well, let's go for a hike and let's do this and that. And I'm thinking, well, what are we doing? I never thought about it as a romantic thing. And then like one weekend, he just said, oh, my family's going away to camping trip. You should come with me. And I was like, sure. At this point, I already like knew we had a lot in common and enjoyed his company. So we went on the camping trip, fell in love on that camping trip. When we came back, I was scared, right? So I decided, oh, I'm going to go to New York for a week. I came to New York just to kind of get my bearings, and I had lined up to meet every boo that I knew still in New York that week. I was going to have a date every night, right? Just to get him out of my system. But then he called me, he was like, I miss you. I'm coming to New York. He came to New York and we conceived my daughter that week. That was like 6 weeks after we had met. Okay. Now, mind you, this is not advised. And I'm not saying that this is what people need to be doing. I'm just telling my story. We conceived my daughter. And it wasn't on purpose. It just, this is how things happen when it's like God doing it. I've never, as many times as I've made mistakes in my life with, sex and partners and all of that, I've never had this happen, right? So I know it was God. So we got pregnant. He was great throughout my pregnancy. He was very supportive. He was very supportive after, during delivery and postpartum. And then maybe about a year after she was born, she was a year old, he started to shift a little bit and we realized we weren't compatible. Then we went through the miscarriage, which eventually led to us deciding not to get married. And now we're just co-parenting. He's still a good guy. He's a great father and all that stuff. But that story, like, I mean, I could never have put that together. All I did was create the space for the adventure. And then I'm the kind of person who always just I lead like my curiosity, I let it lead me to stuff. Like I'm not afraid of that. I'm not like I don't push away from it. I'll like if I'm really curious about something, I'll sleep on it. Maybe I'll put it on the shelf. But if it keeps coming to me, I'll go with it. And so that going to Tulsa thing, I think was me seeking adventure again and me, spending the time that I was willing to spend with him without knowing what we were doing, without demanding to know we were doing and all that stuff was just another curiosity situation. And it ended up leading to the biggest blessing of my life. So I now am a big proponent of, self-awareness. Like I know that who I am and I know what moves me and I allow those things to move me. And it has taken me like all over the world. And I've done so many amazing things to the point where by the time I had my daughter, I'm 41 then, there was nothing else that I really wanted to do. I have stuff I want to do, but if I don't do any of it, I'm good. Like I've done enough stuff, so I think that was another part of it too. Like I have definitely lived and I encourage people to live. Like, don't be sitting around waiting for the stuff to happen because, that's just not how it works. I don't, at this point, if I never did anything else but took care of her, I would be content. And that helps me because I'm the kind of person who gets into trouble if I'm bored and I'm not really bored with it. And, it's not easy. And so that helps me to be able, I'm excited. She's my new adventure. And I just let that lead us now, with or without him.
Amen. Well, yes, Howard Law. That's so awesome. Did you go to school before you had her? Yeah, because you.
Yes. Yeah, all the degrees, the bachelor's degree, the JD, and I have a master's degree also in political science that I got all of that out the way before her.
Yeah.
I had already created my business and had been working my business for about 10 years before I had her, and had traveled and done, just everything, dated all the different categories of men I wanted to date and all that stuff. So I encourage people to do all that.
Yeah, I agree.
Help.
My students and anyone that I know that's young to live your life, do everything that you want to do first before you have kids. Because once you have kids, they're your life until
Hmm.
they are older, they're still your life, but then you get a little bit of your life back. But I can relate to that too. I'm glad that I got a lot of my dream stuff that I wanted to do out of the way.
You said you teach, you have students.
Yes, I teach dance.
Oh my God, that's so cool. You remind me of the lady on This Is Us. Did you watch This Is Us?
Oh my gosh, I
Okay.
one. I stopped watching it because it made me cry too much.
I know you have to take it in stages, but her dance, I don't want to tell you if you stop watching, but yeah,
Oh yeah, I
she's
got
a dancer.
a dancer on there. Oh,
Yeah, the black lady is a dancer.
oh my.
You have to keep watching
Okay.
it.
I guess I'll
Well, let me tell you something else. I actually am a dancer myself. Like if I could go back and do it over, that's what I would be doing. I stopped dancing when I was about 10 years old and I started playing basketball and running track instead. And not that I regret it, but it's like one of those things that's still in me.
it is not too
What'd
late.
you say?
It is.
Oh, girl, this body just don't move like that no
It
more.
might. It might. You just have to stretch every day and start moving it. You'd be surprised.
There are not a lot of places that take adults.
Oh, what about a community college? Community college has dance classes.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's a good idea. That's a good idea. I didn't think of that.
I totally agree with the healing from daddy issues. That does something. It does wonders when you are able to do that. It takes something in the dad for him to be ready to do that. And it takes something in you for you to be ready to accept the forgiveness. And um, yeah, so I understand that my dad was not around when I was younger, but then he started to come around when I had my son. He wanted to be a grand.
Oh,
Yeah, so, but we had the talks before my son was born. We had them like a few years before that. So I was kind of open to having a relationship with him again.
oh, that's awesome. So glad to hear that. But we don't hear enough of those stories
No,
about, our black men stepping up. I really have a heart for men. I don't, we have a lot of circles like this one, you and I talking and healing with each other and all that. And I just hope that they will find their way to the same because it is important and necessary.
the Excel sheet that you have that you break down into 30-minute increments. I would love to see an example of that. That sounds so detailed and so what my ADHD brain needs.
I
And
have ADHD too, so this is one of the tools that I use to coach my clients who have ADHD. Yeah, it works.
yeah, you should
I
make
can
it.
even I'll email it to you.
Oh, yes, I would love that. Thank you so much. And it's funny that you mentioned Tulsa. We have so much in common. Tulsa, Oklahoma. I spent a summer there.
Oh,
Yeah, my aunt was going to Oral Roberts University.
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
What'd you think of Tulsa?
What did I think?
Hmm.
I don't honestly, I think I was in middle school, so I don't remember too much. I do remember um I don't know. I'm from North Carolina originally, so it kind of just reminded me of North Carolina.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
into
Yeah.
Sonic a lot, so that became my favorite thing, Sonic slushies.
Okay.
And, yeah, I feel like I experienced my first bout of racism there.
Okay.
Uh,
Not surprising. Tulsa's a special place. Did you know about the massacre at that point?
no, not at all.
Okay.
Mm-mm. Did that have anything to do with them inviting people to come there?
Yeah, that's probably the main thing. I don't know if a lot of people know this. Tulsa is the philanthropy capital of the United States. There are more private foundations and charities in Tulsa than anywhere else, even New York City. And part of that is the guilt that they have and the trying to make it up thing, even though they won't say that. And so this was a foundation that, they try. And they said that they wanted to diversify and bring talent back to Tulsa, but the timing, it's not coincidental that we were there the year of the centennial. That's what made me decide to go. It was the 100-year centennial of the massacre when I was there in 2001, and I'm sorry, 2021.
Wow.
And so there was a lot of programming. They did all those documentaries, and Oprah was there, and Tyler Perry, and all these people. And I think they wanted to have bodies in chairs. They wanted to show energy. It's actually I mean, with all due respect, it's a very dead place, like most of the time. There are times when there was just nothing going on, right?
Mhm.
But that particular year, there was a lot going on. And so they needed to have bodies, and they paid us. Um, Originally, it was remote workers. Now they are basically incentivizing people coming and staying. So I got out, but most of my people, like friends, are still there. Like they gave us incentives for buying homes and doing stuff to stay because they're trying to create something. They want it to be like the tech capital, Black tech capital. I don't know if it'll ever happen, but that's the goal. And it's mostly out of guilt,
Right.
I think. Hmm.
Wow. I never knew that. How did you find out
Yeah, I mean,
them
uh,
guiding people?
so I'm a digital, I mean, I hate to say this, but I've been what you would call a digital nomad for a long time, not on purpose, but because I am kind of a mover. Like I said about my childhood, like every 3 to 5 years we would move. That actually continued into my adult life. And so my educational pursuits and career opportunities have taken me all over, and I've lived a lot of different places. And so I'm an attorney, but I'm licensed in Texas. But I live in New York. And so I've been running a remote law practice for 10 years now, even before people started doing that. And so I was a part of these remote worker communities.
Wow.
And during the pandemic, one of the ways that I side hustled was I started to help people digitize their law firm, because this is a kind of a sidebar, but my first job out of undergraduate school was I went and worked for a law firm in Houston where I took them virtual. This was in 2000 when it was nobody was doing this. I took all their files, scanned it in, created a virtual filing system, and then trained everybody on how to do it. And they ended up becoming so efficient. They made a ton of money. All they dissolved the firm because the partners just were like, what are we even here doing? Which was awesome. Like I saw a real digital transformation happen. And so ever since then, I'm really passionate about technology, and especially using technology in the law as a tool for people to have more efficiency and access to the justice system. So with that, during the pandemic, I had a number of friends who were kind of caught off guard by the virtual thing, and they couldn't have people come into their offices anymore. So I started helping people digitize their offices. So this put me into these circles of people who were remote and remote workers. And because Tulsa Remote, that's what it's called, was marketing in these same circles, I ended up hearing about it.
Wow.
And that's what made me decide to.
That is so awesome.
Like it was a good opportunity, like for anybody that's like, oh, I'm not sure where I want to live or whatever. Like it's a decent place to raise a family. There's enough stuff to do, but you're not going to be overwhelmed. And the money, it was just enough to make it worth it. Like basically, I spent that money on my rent, extra rent. And it's not like it's a ton of money, but it was enough to make it like I didn't have to take a loss to make the move.
Right. I just don't think a lot of people know that things like that exist or could even be possible.
There are other cities that are doing it too now. A lot of other cities. There's a couple cities in West Virginia. I think there's one in Illinois. There's also some international options for this. So if you Google like I think like remote worker incentives or something like that, it'll all come up. Because I look at them every now and then because I would actually do it again if it was the right place. But there are other places in the country and internationally that are doing it.
Wow. That is so awesome. let's transition into your traveling with your little one. You went
Oh
to
my God.
Ghana and Mexico. Can you?
Yeah, so I had to start traveling with her so basically that whole year when we were in Tulsa, I was pregnant. I had the baby in February and then my year ended in March. And so we had to decide, are we going to stay in Tulsa or are we leaving? And we decided to leave. And so I had to take my first flight with her when she was 8 weeks old. We went back to New York for a little while. And so I learned early that I could do it. Like she traveled well. She still does. And so when I learned that babies in lap fly free, I was like, how many trips can we take before she turns two? Now that she's two, it's like, oh my God, it's double. Everything's double. So I have to think twice on stuff. But I took full advantage of that time. Um, and so we went to Ghana when she was 6 months old. It was a 10-hour flight and she slept. We went at night. I bought this special little traveling backpack, which I still use, and it had like a cot. It pulls open too. They call it a changing um pad, but it was a full cot. And she slept in that like all night, on the way to Ghana. When we got there, we rented a place and we worked at an office that was close by called the Impact Hub. Shout out to the Impact Hub in Accra. They're great people. If you work and you're in Accra, you're gonna need to have access to good Wi-Fi because most of like private homes don't really have it yet. And so there was a lady, I used a friend of mine has a travel company and she helped me connect with a nanny. So we had a lady to come over to our apartment and keep the baby while we went to the Impact Hub and work. And this lady, can you believe? I mean, she was amazing. But if we only paid $150 a week for this woman to be there full time. And for her, like that was making her entire life. Um, and so I just realized like we're kind of getting screwed when we pay so much for everything here. Our apartment, it was a really nice place. We pay, I think it was 800 a month, but like that was a lot. Like I knew we were getting, even in their terms, we were getting screwed, right? They were overcharging us even then because they could. And I was like, it's still so much less than what we would be spending in the US. It's fine. I mean, you could get an apartment there for $500 or $600 a month, full time. People, we had staff on the property. There was a man that guarded the gate. We had a cook, all this stuff for that. It was amazing. And I just, it opened my eyes to like, man, we really could, we have to rethink this. And so then the Mexico thing, I am being from Texas. I think it's important. Bilingual education is huge for me. I'm not fluent in Spanish, but I speak enough, like I understand it, and I speak enough to get by. And it's important to me that my daughter be fluent in Spanish. And so I took her to Mexico and I take her to Mexico every year, at least for a month, so that she can speak Spanish and be a part of that culture. I think that our children need that. I think that if we don't do it, they're going to have a problem in this country because of the population shift. And so we went and we stay in Mexico City once a year. And we just, I mean, it's like little, it's like New York in a sense. So I love it. And again, super cheap. We had a 3 bedroom with a full balcony and everything, $800 a month. I paid 200 a week for the childcare full time, and she cooked and cleaned and everything else. I mean, your money goes so much further. So I just every now and then need to step out of this, democracy slash capitalism situation and like see what else is out there and get a better sense of like who I am globally so that I can come back into the fire and do the work I need to do. And I'm grateful to be able to take my daughter on those journeys with me. She still travels well. She never complains, she sits down, all that stuff. And I'm hoping she'll always be that way. So, and I know it's not like that for everybody. So I'm grateful.
I get it. I understand. My little 4-year-old, he is my road dog. He is such a good little traveler because we have traveled with him since he was born. He's been on the road for road trips and flying. So I think when you start them young, they get used to it. And I think she'll be a good traveler for the rest of her life.
Oh, thank you. And I think the same. I always encourage moms. I'm in all these mommy groups. I think that's where we met in like a Facebook moms group. And I see people saying, I almost never, and maybe I'm too confident. I don't really think about, oh, what if something happens to me and my daughter? Like, it surprises me when people say, I'm so scared to travel alone and all that. I don't know. I mean, I think about it because she's a beautiful little black girl, and I know there was this thing about people taking kids and stuff. I do think about it, but just I don't know. I'm not scared of that. I'm not scared. Like I trust, have a lot of faith. I'm, pretty street savvy. I'm not perfect, but I just don't think that's part of my journey. So I just don't let it stop me. And I hope that other people will hear what I'm saying and just do it. Like do it one time so you can see what it's like, so you can get past that. Because honestly, like a lot of, I've noticed, and you may notice this too, a lot of older women, they have a lot of bitterness and regret and resentment and stuff. And if you don't live your life, that's how you end up. Like you can't blame anybody else. Like that's you doing that. Like you have to own that. And so if you're young enough to do it and you have the resources, please do it because we don't want any more miserable people. We can't, we have enough of that. You know, find a way to blame other people for sure. So yeah, she's a little, there are lots of tools that I use. I could go into that. I think about sometimes making an Amazon list, but I have like my go-to travel gear that like I just keep. Like I finally busted up that travel backpack and I just literally yesterday ordered another one because it just works. Like this is the one that I like to use. Her stroller was perfect, the car seat, all that stuff. It was, thank God we got the right stuff. And so that makes it easy too.
Well, if you make that list, let me know and we can link it. How do you help other moms who are looking to start their own business or any advice that you would give to a mom that wants to start her business?
Yeah, I would say this goes for anybody, moms especially, because I think that we just have like something because of, we're made to create. I think everybody is, but because women have an actual source of creation within them, like an incubator inside, it makes it easier for us to connect to that creative space. But I hope that our men will get more on board. But I think you have to start with like truth. I'm a lover of truth. Um, I do believe that there is, universal truth. And like you have to be honest with yourself about like what would you really do for free? Like what's the thing that you would do? You just give it away. And then that's the thing that you need to niche and monetize and like stop trying to be a jack of all trades or just do something because it's a fad, like I'm selling sea moss or whatever. Like monetize the thing you would do for free. And I help people create businesses. First, I help them figure out what that thing is. And then we do mission, vision, and values, right? And what's your mission statement? We actually start with the values because what you consider to be important is how you build your marketing. So you can attract like-minded people to you. So I have them to do like a short list of their values. Then we go through a vision exercise and visualization. It's like a meditative space that I create so that we can use our senses to look into our future and then backtrack, right? We reverse engineer what it is that we see. And then we do a mission statement. I have a little bit of a formula that I use for that. And then we decide on an entity, whether it's going to be a LLC, corp, whatever. We do a book of contracts. We start, securing business, bringing in revenue, and then we do the intellectual property and an estate plan. I think that those things, if you like do those basic things, like you have a pretty solid foundation to be able to either just side hustle it out. If you get to the point where you want to start seeking government contracts and grants and all this stuff, there are some additional things you're going to need to do, like operating agreement, standard operating procedures, and all that stuff. But it's enough to get started just to be clear about what you want to do. It's hard, like entrepreneurship is very difficult. And so you don't want to be doing something you don't enjoy. You already have a job. So why just make another job? Right? Like let your business be an outlet. Every trip I take, by the way, is a business trip. Like I'm always, when I went to Accra, I taught a class called How to Do Business in America, and people came and I basically took them through my whole system, and it was amazing. I actually had an immigration issue. I didn't get my visa right before I got to Ghana the first time. And so when they took me in the back room, it was all scary and everything. But when he said, "What are you doing here?" And I told him, I said, "I came to teach a course on how to do business in America." And his whole face just lit up. He was like, "Oh my goodness, my daughter needs to take this class. Can she come to the class?" Next thing I know, I had a visa stamp. Okay. So your business, when it's truly like coming from a place of truth, like that's your wealthy place and it pours out and people can catch on to that, it just opens so many doors that it's been a source of support for me. I've had jobs, I have jobs, right? Jobs come and go. But my safety net has been my business. And I think especially for moms, since so many of us are, unfortunately, so many women are now single, raising children on their own, the business can be a safety net for you. Like even in those times of transition, you always have that and you're building it. You're building it. It takes time to build. I've been running my business for wow, 14 years now. Um, and it's coming, it's my truth. Like it's who I am. And so it makes it not easy, but easier to like get like after I get off the phone with you tonight, I still have some things I have to do. And I like doing. And so I try to help people create businesses doing things they like, monetize your vocation. And your vocation is that thing that you would do for free anyway. Very few people get to work a job, like an occupation, doing what they love. Now, if you're doing that, then great, right? You already halfway there. But if you're working in an occupation that doesn't align with your vocation, then you need to create a business so you have an outlet for that because I'm not going to go be preachy. I'm not, proponent of people getting on and starting to preach on these podcasts, but I'm just going to say this. When it says obedience is better than sacrifice, that I think that's what it means. Like we're all here to do something. We don't have to, yeah, you sacrifice every day and you get up and go to your job. That's not honorable. What's honorable is doing what you were made to do. And when I said yes to my calling, then I've never been without. I've never, like, remember I started this saying I've done everything I want to do. I've gotten everything I want. I mean that. And that's because early I figured out who I am and what I was here for. And then I just started doing it. And like doors have flown open and it hasn't been perfect. It's just been an amazing journey. Like that safety net, I've fallen literally and figuratively, but my safety net is always there to catch me because I'm operating from a place of truth and obedience to my call. And God honors that. That's true obedience. We don't have to be without sin. And you remember, like, and I'm now starting to preach, but okay, Jesus, Muhammad, whoever you want to call the prophets that were here doing the work on earth, right? Divine people who were here on earth. What were they doing? He kept saying, I'm about my father's business. He was like, when they say he was without sin, who knows what happened between 18 and 33 whenever we picked it back up. That's what it means to me.
Wow, yeah.
And it helps, like I have find grace in that. I get a lot of grace because if I'm wrong, God help me. But this is what it means to me. I'm about my father's business and he covers me because I'm just doing the work.
All right. That's beautiful.
Thank you. And I mean it. Like that's my truth. Like I think a lot of people will find freedom. I mean, just 2 years ago, I had a child out of wedlock. Like a lot of people, like all my friends, they were so gracious and kind. The super religious people, my grandma and all of them. At the end of the day, like, what can people say? We've all done different stuff. So, like, I think people are so busy, like, trying to be perfect and everything. That's not what it is. You need to make sure you're here doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Right.
That's obedience. So even when I made that quote unquote mistake, everything was perfect about it. Because, like God made a man who didn't love me I had the best. He took me on like a 6 week baby moon before we had the baby. Like we drove west to like Colorado, Santa Fe, Albuquerque, did all that and came back. This man claims that he didn't love me this whole time, but he was doing all this stuff.
Well,
And I don't whatever with him on that, but I'm just saying, like, God will make a way for you even when you're making a quote unquote mistake.
right.
So I'm a big proponent of do what you got to do so that you can live the life you want to live.
I'd love to talk to you more about business and stuff like that. I might be sending you some questions, but
Yes.
I could talk to you for like all day. But I don't want to take up too much more of your time. Is there anything else that you would like to share with everyone? Anything that you would like to leave our moms with?
Yeah. I would say that I just in the last 2.5 years that I have been a mom, I have met some of the most outstanding, courageous women that I've ever known. And I just am so grateful to be a part of this tribe. I think that we support each other in unbelievable ways, and it's something that I don't take for granted. So I appreciate you for giving me the opportunity to share my story and my journey. And I just hope that we continue to support each other in the ways that we do, and don't let our differences get in the way. And also, I have to say, let's support Kamala Harris for president, please, this year. Let's get out and vote. Like, I'd be remiss if I don't say that. It's not a political platform, but I want to be clear about what I believe and stuff. And so let's support her and get this work done. And the other thing about that is you don't have to be out in the street canvassing and stuff in order to be active in this process.
Mhm.
Find your way of contributing, whatever that is, even if it's just educating people or whatever. Because moms, we really don't have time to. I'll tell you something. When I was little, my grandmother ran for the school board, and I remember going door to door, and I'll never forget that. I was very small. I remember being hot and like, oh my God, what are we doing? She ended up winning, so it made sense, right? But don't be scared to take your kids out there and show them what this like. It's something that really made a big impact in my life. So let's do what we have to do, and win or lose, we won't have any regrets.
Yes. Yes, ma'am. Well, where can our listeners find you and learn more about your work?
Absolutely. So I'm Kristyan Rose on everything. That's KristyanRose. Kristyan Rose on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. Please find me. Please connect with me. I would love to share with you what we're doing. I'm building a tribe of people who are mission-driven entrepreneurs, and we support each other, and we would love to have you join.
Awesome. Kristy, thank you so much for sharing your incredible journey and insights with us. It's
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
of course.
God bless you and your little man.
Oh, thank you. I actually have a little man and a little girl. I have a
Oh, and the ones that are on the way.
1-year-old. Oh, in the future, years and years from now.
Okay. Like I said, it's up to you. You create the life you want. So make sure you're being intentional about that, and don't let the pressure get the best of you. You got it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, y'all have a good evening.
You too.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. To our listeners, make sure to check out the links in our bio for more information. Until next time, take care and stay inspired.